Hello everyone, I, Ankita Bangar, welcome you all for today's session. Today, on the fourth day of our Direct Tax Refreshers course 2021, we will be covering the topic of HF creation and taxation, which will be taken by our very own CACV Chitare sir. I would also like to welcome Chitare sir. I would also like to welcome CA Sameer Ladda sir, Chairman and Treasurer, Pune ICAI, and CA Kashinath Patare sir, Vice Chairman and Secretary, Pune ICAI. I would now request CA Sameer Ladda sir to please give the welcome address.
And thank you, Ankita. Today's our speaker, C.V. Chitare sir, our own CCM from Pune, my co-chairman, C. Kashinath Patare, today's MOC, C. Ankita Bangar, and all the August audience. Welcome on second last session of this DTRC 2021. It's our privilege that we have today's speaker who is not only Central Council member, but it's chairman of Directors Committee of our institute, and as well as the most important thing about him is that he is a pioneer of DTRC of Pune branch. When he was a chairman long back, I don't know exactly year, sir, he has started the DTRC, and this DTRC is so famous and so loved by the audience that this continues together 2 years, and I am very much sure this will be continuing upcoming years for decades. So Chitare sir is a pioneer of DTRC, and it is our privilege that he is speaker today. Thank you, Chitare sir, for giving your valuable time to us and our audience. Before you start today's session, I just want to make some announcement about upcoming events of Pune branch of ICAI. We have national conference on capital market on 16th, 17th, and 18th of this July. So registration are already started. So participants, please register for this national conference on capital market. A lot of eminent speakers are going to share their views in this national conference. Also, we have national conference on 24th, 25th, and 26th of this month on indirect tax, that is on GST. So again, the third national conference in consecutive on the direct tax will be in the second week of August. So participants, we have continuously now 3 national conference, and it is our really great pleasure that ICAI has allotted such a national conference to us, and for that none other than Chitare sir has coordinated. Also, thanks Chitare sir again for coordinated such a great national conference of Pune branch of ICAI. Thanks a lot. Over to Ankita for further process. Wish you happy learning.
Thank you, sir. Obviously, Chitare sir won't need an introduction.
I think we can skip that, yeah.
No, we will surely have an introduction, but he's a practicing chartered accountant and a senior partner of a well-known firm. He holds the degrees of BCom and LLB along with CA. He's for the year 19 to 22. He's a chairman, Direct Taxation Committee, and vice chairman of Banking, Financial Services, and Insurance Committee. He's a member of Group on Multidisciplinary Firms of Chartered Accountants, Financial and Tax Literacy, etc. He's a former chairman of Corporate Laws and Corporate Governance Committee and former vice chairman of Committee on Public and Government Financial Management. He had been a member of the Managing Committee of Pune branch of the Institute during the year 1988 to 91. And was the chairman of Pune branch of the ICAI for the year 1988 to 89. He had been the vice president of Pune Chartered Accountants Society for the year 97 to 99 and chairman Direct Taxation Committee of the MCCIA Pune for more than a decade, and Maharashtra Chamber of Commerce, Industries and Agriculture, Mumbai. He was the treasurer of the Maratha Chamber of Commerce, Industries and Agriculture, during the year 2002 to 8 and 2012 to 2018. He has contributed draft textbooks which have been adopted as study material for intermediate and final curriculum of the Institute of Cost Accountants of India. He has written several articles in newspapers and periodicals, including the Economic Times, Chartered Accountant Journal, Management Accountant, Taxman, Arth Manthan, Sampada Sakar, Maharashtra Times, Lok Satta, etc. He also specializes in corporate and tax counseling, corporate laws, legal drafting, and appellate practice before First Appellate Authority and Income Tax Appellate Tribunal. We welcome you, sir. We can now start with the session.
Thank you. Honorable Chairman and my good friend Samir, Honorable Vice Chairman Kashinath, gracious moderator Ankita, and all of you, my friends. It's my pleasure to be with you dealing one topic relating to our most important aspect of taxation, that is Hindu undivided family. In fact, one issue came before me for the purpose of appellate matter, and that particular land belonged to the HUF, and then accordingly some tax was not properly calculated, some deductions, exemptions were not given. But then while I studied that particular case, I realized that that land in first place did not belong to HUF, but for past 7-8 years it was carried forward as HUF, and the assessee was under the impression, the department was also under the impression, and the concerned professionals were under the impression that it belongs to the HUF. Therefore, I thought that maybe this is the time that we once again revisit this particular traditional topic of HUF, and once again reinforce what are the principles associated with this particular topic. So I'm asked to talk on this HUF creation and taxation. And this particular topic I have broadly divided into 6 heads. One is why HUF, then what is HUF, then creation of HUF, taxation of HUF, assets and income of HUF, and partition. And certain issues, maybe if time permits, we will address. Coming to why HUF, as you are aware that under Income Tax Act, HUF is a separate entity. Therefore, it enjoys the threshold limit of 2.5 lakhs. And if the husband and wife are there, maybe they are having income exceeding 20 lakhs or with revised tax rates, say 30 lakhs. In that case, if they earn 1 rupee more and they are exposed to tax at a marginal rate of 30%, so they are in search of any mechanism for the purpose of saving taxes. And HUF affords one such easier mechanism that they can avail the advantages of this threshold and various other benefits. So this is one reason that it should be there. HUF has a separate PAN card. It can run its own business to generate the income. And as far as HUF property is concerned, it is difficult to attach because even minors' interests are weighted in the property of the HUF, and there are a number of other reasons. HUF can also avail additional income tax benefit. Say if your income is up to say 4 lakh, 5 lakh or more, maybe you can invest under section 80C, 80D. If the interest is there, additional 10,000 benefit is available apart from benefit at individual levels. These sections 44, 54F, 54EC, 56, they also afford certain exemptions, because in a case of individual, if you receive gift from third parties, maybe above 50,000 rupees, these are taxable. But if additional gift is of 50,000 rupees is received by the HUF, that also will remain beyond the tax net. As far as 2 house properties are concerned, they are considered self-occupied. If you have third house property, it is taxed as a deemed let. But if you take that third house property in HUF, maybe it will again afford benefit of being self-occupied. Then profits generated out of family business get separately taxed. It is also possible with the help of HUF to enter into partnership. Acquisition of shares, securities, mutual funds is also possible under the name of HUF. So these are various advantages which make us think that you have a separate property in HUF. The attachment of property is difficult, and maybe as passive income you can earn, to an extent active income also you are able to earn. So because of these advantages and these benefits, generally people fancy HUF. But everything is not hunky-dory. There are some disadvantages as well. So before we really embark on considering only these advantages and HUF taxation, let us also take note of these disadvantages, that HUF is not a separate entity under general law. So like we know that in case of general law, maybe besides natural entity, natural human beings, there are certain entities which are considered as artificial juridical persons, in which notably we include, say, corporate entities, limited liability partnerships. But as far as ordinary partnership is concerned, it is not considered as a separate entity. And in case of HUF also, it is not a separate legal entity. In case of HUF, all members have equal rights in the property. So with every birth or every marriage, the rights get diluted to some extent. And with every death, rights also change. Then common property cannot be sold without concurrence of all the members. Birth or marriage rights get impaired. Partition of HUF into small groups becomes an issue. Even closing down the HUF is more complicated. At times, banks are not very happy giving loan to the HUFs because relying on security becomes very difficult. On HUF closure, distribution of asset also is a huge task. Then in practice, joint families are increasingly losing their importance. HUF members at times dispute happens over the property. So these are various things which which can be considered as limitations. But friends, as we are aware that when we embark on a travel, the chances of accident are omnipresent. But then we don't abandon the travel because of that risk. Maybe we take it in stride, we adopt appropriate precautions, and we go ahead with the travel. Similar is the thing as far as HUF is concerned. Maybe these are limitations, these are disadvantages, but if you take proper care of them, maybe along with those disadvantages also, advantages would outperform the thing. And maybe one should certainly think in terms of HUF. And it is not that these problems may not occur in case of partnership, in case of corporate entities. There are also quarrels, disputes, etc. are possible. So here also there is no different story. So maybe these disadvantages need not deter us from shying away from this particular very useful entity, namely HUF. So let us consider what is an HUF. Now, Hindu undivided family is also commonly called as joint Hindu family. It is a special feature of Hindu society because it is not found in any other religions. So Hindu undivided family is a product of our Hindu custom. It is not created by contract. Like in case of partnership, maybe few friends or few business acquaintances or even maybe family members can come together and they say that, okay, let's constitute ourselves into a partnership or let's incorporate a company and then move forward. So they will be abide by contractual relationship and they can constitute partnership or they can constitute company or cooperative society. But HUF is not formed in such a contractual manner because it is not product of law or it is not product of a contract. It is product of a custom. So what is that custom? So let us try to understand a family staying in a village. Maybe they have a farm of say 10 acres or whatever. So everybody from the family goes on for the purpose of working on farm. Maybe in due course of time, they open some, say, kirana shop, they run some restaurant. So everybody from the family keeps on working here and there. They keep on earning income. They keep on spending out of that income. So if a question is asked, okay, to whom the farm belongs, to whom the trading shop belongs, to whom the restaurant belongs, that nobody can say it belongs to me. Everybody says that it belongs to our family. So this is the real concept of joint Hindu family. And those families used to be abundantly available in villages. Today also there may be such families present in villages. So this particular living together was the custom of a Hindu tradition. And in this case, it was a male dominated family. So the senior-most male member was considered as Karta of that family or manager of that family. And he used to take care of everybody. So this is the concept of Hindu undivided family. customarily, Hindu undivided family springs from a common ancestor and it goes to 3 generations later. So in all, there are 4 generations, the common ancestor generation and 3 generations beyond them, the lineal descendant to those common ancestors. It doesn't go beyond 4 generations. So if we assume that Mr. A and Mrs. A are the common ancestors, then maybe their son, maybe they have 2 sons and 1 daughter, say B and C are sons, D is daughter, so that is subsequent generation. Then B and C have a son, so that is grandson of A, so that is 3rd generation, and these grandsons have son, daughter, etc. So that is 4th generation. So these 4 generation would be taken together, constituting an HUF, in which A would be the senior most member and he will be considered as Karta of the HUF. As far as law is concerned, whenever we follow the tradition is the uppermost in our mind. And if the tradition is not followed, even courts will not be happy in considering that breach, and that will be taken cognizance of. But certain traditions which are not considered healthy by the society, they are overcome. So certain traditional rules in case of this HUF, which was a male or which is a male dominated family or a male dominated entity, certain changes have been made by law, that those we will discuss. So HUF consists of male and female members. Daughters born in the family are the members. Women, wives married to the family are also members of the HUF. And all male members who are born in family are considered as members. Now in members also, there are 2 classes of members. One is co-parceners and other are the members. So co-parceners is limited to, co-parcenery is limited to the members in the following degree of common male ancestor. So male ancestors so if in this given example, Mr. A is a male member, B and C are male member, maybe son of B and C are male member, and their sons are also male members. So all these male members are considered as co-parceners, and all female members who are daughters and wives are considered as members. This is as far as tradition is concerned. Some change is brought about by law that we will separately consider. So HUF is a expression employed for the purpose of taxation law. So for income tax law, joint Hindu family or Hindu undivided family is a separate entity. But as far as general law is concerned, under general law, HUF is not a separate entity. So that fact has to be noted. What is Hindu? Hindu undivided family or Hindu are not defined anywhere in the law, but some references are found, like Article 25 of the Constitution, that defines what is Hindus. So it says that Hindus shall be construed as including references to the person professing the Sikh, Jain, Buddha religions, and reference to Hindu religion shall also accordingly be constituted. Under Hindu Succession Act also, these communities are considered as Hindus. What is expressly excluded or what we can consider are not Hindus are Muslims, Christians, Parsi or Jew. So if any person or family is following these religions, Muslim, Christian, Parsi or Jew, they cannot have an HUF because HUF is a product of Hindu custom. So these customs do not have such joint families. So there the concept of HUF is missing. So to have an HUF, that is undivided family, the adjective is Hindu. So you should be Hindu, then you can have Hindu undivided family. In this term are included all those persons who are Hindus by religion. Section 2 of Hindu Succession Act elaborately declares that it applies to a person who is Hindu by religion in its any form, development, and including any Veerashaiva, Lingayat, or follower of Brahmo, Prarthana, or Arya Samaj, Buddhist, Jain, Sikh. So basically these all sects are following Hinduism, and after having broadly Hindus, they follow some different procedures for the purpose of worshipping the god. So all of them are considered as Hindus. Even the Supreme Court had occasion to consider Hindu. So Supreme Court said that who profess Hindu religion or to whom Hindu law applies or who are regarded as Hindus, they are also considered as Hindus. And generally, Privy Council has taken a liberal view as far as who is Hindu. So those who are following Hinduism are generally considered as Hindus. Now, the co-personary and the member. Who is co-personer and who is member? And at this moment, we are considering only traditional meaning of HUF. So we are not going into the change made by law, which we will subsequently go. That HUF is a body consisting of persons lineally descended up to 3 generations or 3 degrees from a common ancestor and includes wives and daughters in the family. So all those male members and female members who are born in the family are members of the HUF. All female members who are married to the male members of the family are members of the HUF. Of course, when we say born, we also include in it those sons, daughters who are adopted in the family. So supposing there is one son who is born and one daughter who is adopted, both will have equal value. So whether adopted or begotten in the family, both are considered as members of the family. But then as far as all male members are concerned, they are co-personers, and all female members are concerned, they are members. Only co-personer can claim partition of the property, but when partition takes place, female members also get share in the property because to maintain them is the responsibility of the family. Subsequently, there has been change in Hindu succession law, and daughters are also now getting the status of co-personer. That we will separately examine. Now, there is one important concept of Karta in HUF. Karta is the head of the family. And who is head of the family? It is the senior most male member is customarily the Karta or manager of the family. It is possible that maybe in the HUF that we are discussing, Mr. A, Mrs. A, B and C sons, D daughter, then grandsons of A, great-grandsons of A, great-daughters, granddaughters, great-granddaughters. So all of them are members and co-personer of the HUF, and Mr. A, being the senior most male member in the family, he will become Karta. Now, maybe after passage of time, A perishes, A expires, then the HUF will not die. HUF will continue because there are other members in the HUF. Mrs. A is there, their children are there, their grandson children are there, great-grandchildren are there. So after demise of Mr. A, who is the senior most male member in the HUF? It is B, who is the young eldest son. So he will automatically assume the responsibility of a Karta, and he will look after all family matters, all financial matters of the family. This is the tradition. But then subsequently, courts have also adopted a view that if supposing the senior most male member is not willing to be a Karta, or it is not possible from him to be a Karta for some reasons, then even the family can select some other junior member to be the Karta. So if B tells that, okay, he is over-occupied or he is staying abroad, so he is not able to maintain or give any attention to the family matters, so he is not willing to be a Karta, then maybe family may say that, okay, his younger brother C can be a Karta. So there is no bar. Of course, the judgments are there in the PPT, and I am going to share the PPT with the branch. So I am not reciting the judgments. But these are whatever we are talking is coming out of various court judgments. So even a junior male member can become a Karta of the HUF. Can a female member become a Karta? So as per Hindu tradition, female member cannot become a Karta. So wife in a family cannot be a normal circumstances, she cannot be a Karta. However, if the co-personers are incapable of attending to the affairs of the HUF, say there is Mr. A, Mrs. A, and they have, say, 2 children, 3 children, 2 sons, 1 daughter. And at the age of 30, supposing the Karta expires, and at that point of time, the age of sons, daughter, etc., maybe 7 years, 5 years, 3 years. In that case, all are minors, all are not able to attend to these commercial activities, etc. They do not understand also. Therefore, in such circumstances, wife of A can also discharge responsibility of the Karta. So it is not that a wife or a female member cannot become a karta. In given circumstances, she can also act on behalf of the karta. Then this is the important legislation, Hindu Succession Act. In case of succession, this Hindu Succession Act, in order to empower the women folk, certain amendment was made on 9 September 2005. That is the date from which it is effective. In this case, the amendment states that the daughters, whether married or unmarried, and male members of the HUF shall have equal rights. So rights of the daughters were equated with the sons in a family. So earlier we saw that in case of a Hindu undivided family, Mr. A, Mrs. A, B, C and D, B, C being sons and D daughters, we thought that, okay, only male members are the co-parceners, and that is the tradition. But this amendment says that daughters will be having right equal or equivalent to a son. So B and C are co-parceners. So that equivalent right to a daughter means daughter also shall be a co-parcener. So with this amendment from this date all over India, as far as daughters are concerned, they have also become co-parceners in the HUF. So now if we are asked that, okay, in case of A HUF, who is the co-parcener? So A will be the co-parcener being a male member. B and C being male members, they will be co-parceners. But daughter, because of this amendment, shall also be a co-parcener. So only wife of Mr. A or wife of B, wife of C, they will not be co-parcener. They will continue to be members. So this is the beauty of this amendment. Only as far as all over India is concerned, this amendment was brought about from 9 September 2005. But in the state of Maharashtra, when Sharad Pawar was chief minister, from 22nd June 1994 itself, this amendment is prevalent. So in Maharashtra rights in 1994, daughters are considered equivalent to the sons, and they are also co-parceners and not members. So daughters have a dual role to play. Now, in this case, we had an example, Mr. A, B and C are the sons and D is the daughter. Now, supposing in due course of time, D gets married to P. So she will become a member of P's HUF, become wife of P. So earlier, the traditional concept was, as far as this HUF is concerned, daughter will be member of her father's HUF till the date she gets married. Once she gets married, she ceases to be a member of her father's HUF and becomes member of her husband's HUF. But because of this amendment, now traditionally, whatever fact was there that on marriage, she is becoming member of her husband's HUF, PHUF, that continues. But additionally, instead of her cessation from her father's HUF, that cessation has been abrogated. And now the daughter can continue to be co-parcener of her father's HUF. So if we consider the role of D, the daughter of A, after marriage, D will continue to be the co-parcener of A HUF, and D will join the HUF belonging to her husband and all other HUFs of which husband is the member. So husband P will be also member of his father's HUF, his grandfather's HUF, his great-grandfather's HUF. So all these 4 generations HUF, P will be the member. P will be the member, not only member, but a co-parcener. And his wife D, she also will be member of all these 4 HUFs, where she will not be a co-parcener, she will be only a member. So this is as far as the amendment is concerned. Whenever any amendment takes place in a law, the amendment overrides the tradition. Therefore, no more the tradition is applicable. This amendment has overridden the tradition, and daughters have also become co-parceners in their respective father's HUF. Again, in case of HUF, there is one more concept that one has to understand. At one point of time, several HUFs are operating, and it is not that one person is member of only one HUF. He can be member of several HUFs. And let us try to understand with the help of this chart. We have depicted Mr. A and Mr. B, Mrs. A at the top. So these are the common ancestors of this A HUF. Now they have 2 sons and a daughter, B, C, and D. Son B has got 2 he has got two daughters. One daughter is unmarried and one daughter is married. C has got one son. He is married, and the married daughter of B and married son of C, they are also having a son and a daughter, and daughter is married to P. So this is the family. Now, if we talk of this AHUF, all these are members of the AHUF, because now daughter is having rights similar to the son. So she will continue to be co-parsoner. Whether her husband becomes a member of AHUF or not is a debatable matter. Some schools of thought say that he becomes member, whereas some say that he is not a member. But as far as daughter, son and daughter are concerned, they are members of HUF. So here we have seen that as far as son B is concerned, he has a daughter, and his daughter is married and she has a son. So this son of a daughter shall also be member of A's HUF, because right of daughter is equivalent to the son. If son or daughter are members, daughter, son or daughter are also members of the HUF. Similar is the case in case of C. Now, if we consider that A has got a younger son C, C has got a son, and C's son has got a son. So supposing C's son gets married, in that case, C's grandson will have his own HUF with his wife, his children. Now, C's grandson is also son of C's son. So C's son's HUF, his grandson also will be member, his entire family will be member. C is grandfather of C's grandson. So he will also be member of CHF, and his great grandson of A. So he will also be member of AHF. So simultaneously, any person that is who is son, he will be member of 4 HUFs. One is his HUF, secondly his father's HUF, thirdly his grandfather's HUF, and fourthly his great grandfather's HUF. As far as daughter is concerned, daughter also will be similarly member and co-parsoner of 4 HUFs. She will be member of her husband's HUF. She will be member of from her father's side. She will be member of her father's HUF. She will be member of her grandfather's HUF, and she will be member of her great grandfather's HUF. So in all these HUF, her father's HUF, her grandfather's HUF, and her great grandfather's HUF, she will be a co-parsoner, not merely a member. But from her husband's side, again, her husband would be member of 4 HUFs, his HUF, his father's HUF, grandfather's HUF, and great grandfather's HUF. So in all those 4 HUFs, the married woman, that is the daughter, will continue to be member. There she will not be co-parsoner. So one person at one point of time can be member of a multiple HUFs, in which HUF will be Karta. If he is male member, in all other HUFs, he will be co-parsoner. If the female member, to the extent he is daughter in the family, she will be co-parsoner. To the extent she is wife in a family, she will be the member of that HUF, which belongs to her husband's side. So this is the concept of branches of HUF and the HUF. If there are any issues, I think we can consider them. If you want to ask any issues, we'll consider at concept stage itself, so that before it becomes too long, we can really capture the thing. So maybe moderator, if there are any issues in chat box, maybe you can ask me which are on the topic. So we move forward to creation. In the meanwhile, if there are queries, you can ask. Otherwise, I'll move forward.
Yes, sir. We have one question.
Yes.
The question is, in AHF, whether daughter of son B will be a co-parsoner or a member?
Daughter in a family will always be a co-parsoner.
The daughter of the son?
Yes, daughter of the son will be co-parsoner.
Co-parsoner.
Not merely member, yes.
Okay.
In her husband's side, she will be member. Because
Okay.
wife daughters are given rights equivalent to sons.
Right.
So if B's son is a co-parsoner, so B's daughter gets equivalent rights. So she also is a co-parsoner.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That's it for now.
Thank you. Now we come to the main topic, that is creation of an HF. Now, really, as I informed you, that you cannot create an HF because HF is product of a custom, it is product of a tradition. And the moment a Hindu is born, he is born with a family. He never takes birth without family. So if anybody, if we consider this example, supposing B is born, B is on the date of his birth, he is member of AHF. If B's son is born, B's daughter is born, on the date of their birth, they are member of AHF. And even in case of B's son or daughter, they are also members of BHF. And their B's grandson or granddaughter is born, maybe at the moment of birth, he or she is member of B's son and also member of B and also member of AHF. So any Hindu taking birth, immediately he is member of the HF, and HF gets created because of this custom. Two cousins, two friends coming together, they cannot say that, okay, let us form an HF. So HF is already there. Even today, all the members who are Hindus are having HF. And not only they are members of one HF, but they are also member of their father's HF, their grandfather's HF, great-grandfather's HF. So what do we mean by creation of HF? By creation of HF, we mean that we are creating HF a tax entity. Today, HFs are there, but they might not be filing income tax returns. Why they are not filing income tax returns? Because under income tax law, if you have some gross total income exceeding the threshold, then only you are required to file the return of income or furnish the return of income. Since that income is missing, HF is not furnishing the return. So what efforts we have to do from the tax planning perspective is to provide capital to the HF and to provide income to the HF. Now, is it necessary that we provide capital to the HF for creating it as a tax entity? Can't we have income without capital? So let us try to understand how income is earned. Income is earned from salary, income is earned from rendering professional services, rendering other services, by doing business, by capital gains, by interest, by allowing a user of assets. So all these are kinds of income one can earn. For the purpose of salary, professional services or other services, human labor is required or human intervention is required. Now, HF is not a human being, HF is not a person. Therefore, HF cannot render any services, be it professional services, be it employment, or be it any other service. Therefore, this category of incomes cannot be earned by HF. So what remains is income otherwise, other businesses, income from capital gain and income from other sources. And to earn all these categories of income, you need assets. Because for capital gain, you should be owner of asset. For doing business, you need capital. And for earning income from other sources like interest, dividend, or rent, you need asset. For asset, you need capital. So without capital, it will not be possible for HF to earn income. And therefore, by creation of HF, we mean providing capital to the HF and thereby providing opportunity to earn income. And how that happens, let us try to understand. Before that, in case of an HF, formally, it should go on tax file, record of income tax department. So it has to apply for permanent account number. And you know that permanent account number application is made in form 49A. It is made online. In this particular form, credentials of Karta are required to be given. And generally, in case of HF, name of a person and suffix HF is used. So in my case, it will be Chandrasekhar Vasanta Chitale HF. So in anybody, generally a name is used and at the end, the word HF or the three letters HF are mentioned. So this is the HF which will apply for permanent account number along with credentials of Karta. Along with the application, generally one affidavit is expected. And that affidavit tells name of the that affidavit mentions the details of HF, who is the Karta, who are all other members, co-partners, and what is their relationship with Karta. So there will be a table. A, who is Karta of the HUF, Mrs. A, who is wife of the Karta, B, who is son of the Karta, Mrs. B, who is daughter-in-law of the Karta, likewise D, who is daughter of the Karta. So all this information will be given in the affidavit, and that affidavit will be attached along with or furnished along with this form 49A. In due course of time, the HUF will be allotted permanent account number. Once the permanent account number is allotted, with cash of 5,000-10,000 rupees, a bank account can be opened. So this is the formal beginning of HUF to bring it on tax record. Now, from where do you get the capital? The Supreme Court has held that the property received by a co-partner on partition of the HUF is the HUF property. So please try to understand, whenever the HUF is partitioned and whatever is received by the son, it comes to his HUF and not in his personal capacity. So Mr. A HUF is partitioned, and let us assume that A HUF has got 4 crore rupees. So 1 crore rupees are taken by A. Maybe some amount will go to his wife as a maintenance money. Then 1 crore to B, 1 crore to C, and 1 crore to D. As far as A is concerned, he will take it in individual capacity because his HUF is getting partitioned. As far as D is concerned, she will take 1 crore rupees in personal capacity because under custom, wife cannot create an HUF, or daughter or a female member cannot create an HUF. So it will go to her in her individual capacity. But the money going to B and C, they will be received as their HUF's money. So B HUF will have 1 crore rupees and C HUF will have 1 crore rupees. And with those funds, they will start earning the income, or if already they have income, maybe this 1 crore rupee will add to their kitty. Now, interestingly, it is also possible that at the time of partition, C was, say, 8 years old. So he was not married and he received 1 crore rupees. Then what is status of this 1 crore rupees? The law recognizes, the custom recognizes that this particular 1 crore rupee belong to his HUF. But as far as family is concerned, family requires minimum 2 persons. So here he is only 1 person. So 1 person cannot make a family. So as far as whatever income he is earning on 1 crore rupees, that will be included in his individual income. Let us say after 20 years, at the age of 28, C gets married. The moment he gets married, this 1 crore rupees will be identified with his HUF. They will be C HUF's capital and not capital of C individual, because it continued to be HUF money, not individual money. Only till the time of his date of marriage, there was no family. Therefore, return was included, income was included in his individual return. But from the moment he gets married, that will become his HUF income. And thereafter, it will be assessed continuously in the hands of HUF. So on partition of a bigger HUF, what you receive is in a smaller HUF in case of male member of that HUF. But another misconception that also is prevalent, that in case of succession, what amount is received as an ancestral property, and that is received in a HUF capacity. So that is wrong. In case of Hindu dying, there will be 2 situations. Either he will die with making a will, or he will die without making a will. Even it is possible that he has made a will, but he has, say, 18 assets, and in his will only 12 assets were included, 6 were not included. So those assets which were not included, in respect of which he has died without making a will. If he has not made a will at all the 18 assets, he has died without making a will. If a Hindu person dies without making a will, then his property shall be inherited as per provisions of Hindu Succession Act 1956. In Hindu Succession Act, we have section 7, section 8, which tell us about the succession. And particularly section 8 of the Hindu Succession Act tells that there are 4 classes are given: class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4 in schedule A. And if any person from class 1 is existing, then that property will go to the person from class A. Of course, if there are 2 persons from class A, then every person will share it equally. If there are 3 persons, they will share equally. If there are 4 persons, they will share equally. So supposing A at the time of his death had father, 2 sons and a daughter, and he had 4 crore rupees personal property. So when A expires, in case of that class 1, in Schedule A to Hindu Succession Act, what is stated is spouse, then children and mother. So these are class 1 legal heirs, not father, mother. So if mother is alive, she will get share. If mother is not alive, she will not get the share. So in this case, mother is not alive. So wife is alive, spouse is alive, 3 children are alive, 2 sons and 1 daughter. Now, whatever is received by the daughter and wife, that is obviously not HUF property because females cannot have HUF. But whatever is received by B and C, is it individual property or it is HUF property? And there Supreme Court has come out with a conclusion for valid reasons. For want of time, I will not go into reasoning at this moment. But Supreme Court in case of CWD versus Chandrasen has taken a view that whatever a son inherits in intestate succession, he inherits it in his individual capacity and not in HUF capacity. So if you have inherited something from your father, which is his own property, you will inherit it in individual capacity and not in HUF capacity. So all 1 crore rupees going to B and C will be their individual asset, individual property. Now coming to taxation of HUF. So these normal rules are known to everybody. There are slabs, etc., deductions available. Then their residential status depends upon from where the affairs of the HUF are managed. If it is wholly or partly in India, even out of 100 decisions, 1 decision is taken in India, it is resident in India. Otherwise, here it is wholly managed outside India, it is non-resident. Whatever income you receive from HUF's income as a member is not taxable. And mind well, here we are considering income. So supposing HUF has property of 2 crore rupees, they have placed it in a fixed deposit and annually they are receiving 12 lakh rupees. So this year they received 12 lakh rupees and there are 4-5 members. So this 12 lakh rupees are distributed amongst those 4-5 members. So they will receive that part of income, and that part of income which they receive from HUF is exempt under section 10(2). Here what I am talking of is current income, not accumulated income. Because if it is accumulated income, any asset of the HUF, and that is received by the member, yes, that can be received. But under Income Tax Act, it has got a different connotation because it is considered as a partition. And when we consider partition, we will deal with it. So current income can be distributed. And if it is distributed, no tax is attracted. Accumulated income or assets also can be distributed, but some different theory will apply to that. Although they will continue to be exempt from tax, as far as income therefrom will have to be clubbed. So that law we will consider subsequently. Now coming to assets and income, and this is the real challenge for creating HUF and the matters to be planned more meticulously. So as we have seen, why assets are necessary, because HUF can earn only through assets and not otherwise. So keeping assets at the disposal of HUF or keeping capital at the disposal of HUF is utmost necessary. And there are some methods through which the capital can be supplied to the HUF. And first is, we discussed earlier that assets received on partition of larger HUF. So if a smaller HUF receives asset on partition of a larger HUF, then that will be its capital. And with that capital, whatever income is earned will be separate income of the HUF. Second is asset received by way of inheritance. Now, as we discussed earlier, inheritance can be by 2 methods. One is intestate succession, where will is not made by the deceased, or if the deceased has 18 assets, maybe for 12 assets he has made will, and for 8 assets he has not made a will. So that also will be 8 intestate succession for 8 assets, testamentary succession for 12 assets. Now here HUF also can get capital out of inheritance if the will is made. So Mr. A has made a will, and if he makes will, and in the will he says that, okay, 1 crore rupees will go to my son B's HUF, 1 crore rupees will go to my son C's HUF. Then in that case, on his demise, whatever 1 crore are received by B and C, they will not belong to them individually, but they will belong to their HUF. But please remember, the will should have a clear recital that this will go to my son's HUF. And from drafting perspective, let me also tell that if you are giving some bequest to HUFs, not only mention HUF, maybe it would be advantageous also to mention their permanent account number, because you are clearly identifying that this money will go to the person who is having this PAN, which is an HUF. So if this recital clarity is available that money will go to HUF, land will go to HUF, or shares will go to HUF, then only they will go to HUF. But if you just simply mention they will go to B and he should use it for family, etc., then there will be problem. So while drafting will, care has to be taken that clearly HUF has to be mentioned. Whatever daughter D receives, daughter D cannot have an HUF because she is member of her husband's HUF. So whatever money, say 1 crore rupees are given to the daughter, so they cannot be considered as the daughter's husband's HUF. They will be daughter's individual money. But if supposing daughter is also wealthy and she feels that, okay, this 1 crore rupees should come to her husband's HUF, then if she tells the father, requests the father that whatever you want to give me, instead of writing, please give this to my daughter D, please mention, please give this to my son-in-law's HUF. So PHUF, P is husband of D. So if the father makes a will that this amount will go to my son's HUF, this amount will go to my younger son's HUF, and this amount will go to my son-in-law's HUF, then even that 1 crore rupee will go to the son-in-law P, and not in his individual capacity, but in the capacity of HUF. Now, Mr. A has got one friend, M, from childhood. For 50, 60 years, they are friends. So M's son is also a very good friend, well known to A. And he has also affectionate relationship towards, say, son of M. And in a bequest, in a will, A writes that give 10 lakh rupees to M's son's HUF. Supposing M's son is N. So he says, please give 10 lakh rupees to N HUF. In that case, even those 10 lakh rupees will go to N HUF and not to individual. So it is not necessary that you should get only from your father, mother, or such relatives. Even you can get from a stranger if there are some bondages of affection or some respect towards one another. Then you also can be given in HUF capacity. So inheritance is one means of receiving the capital for HUF, but it is always through will and not through intestate succession. Now, third mechanism of having funds is through the gift. And what is recommended is such gifts should be from close relatives or from close friends. Why it is stated so? Because the essence of gift is love and affection. So if there is presence of love and affection, then a gift is given because there is no consideration for gift. So if you take it from close relatives, say if it is, say, BHF, then B's close relative will be B's father, B's mother, B's brother C. So all these are his close relative, even his daughter, even his wife's relatives, so his wife's father, wife's brother, wife's sister. So all these are close relatives of B. So any of them give gift to BHF, then in that case, it will also be capital of BHF. But again, a care has to be taken that gift deed should clearly state that this gift is being given to BHF. It cannot be just mentioned that B's family, B and his family, etc. It is always desirable that clear-cut the gift deed should write that it should be given to B's HF. Whether B himself can give the gift to BHF, the answer is an affirmative, but that is not recommended. Why not recommended? We will consider subsequently. But at this moment, when we are on the topic of gift, let me mention that there is a general fashion that whenever you give 1 crore rupees to your son's HUF or mother gives or sister gives, they make a gift deed on a 500 rupees stamp paper, or they simply write a letter that because of natural love and affection, I am giving you this gift of 1 crore rupees by way of check or whatever. And this is, if it is a stamp paper, 500 rupees stamp paper is used. If it is letter, no stamp paper is used. But if you refer Maharashtra Stamp Act, any gift is required to be executed. If you do writing of the gift, stamp duty is 3%. So 3% stamp duty is required to be paid. So when you are giving gift of 1 crore rupees, 3% of 1 crore, 3 lakh rupee is the stamp value. So if you do not take 3 lakh rupee stamp value, that gift will not be irregular, but it will, that gift will not be wide, but it will be irregular, and you have to fill up the deficiency by paying 2,95,000 rupees and any composition charges. Then only that gift deed would be valid. So while making a gift, please try to understand that gift deed carries a stamp duty, and appropriate stamp duty should be paid. In case of immovable property, further, there is some concession with blood relations, but otherwise, again, the stamp duty is 3%. And even in case of blood relations, etc., now in the Pune city, there is 1% LBT cess and 1% metro cess. So that those 2% are also extra. So that compliance with gift stamp duty also is necessary. Of course, there are some means. When you are giving gift of immovable property, the stamp duty can be avoided by employing some planning. But at the moment, I am not on that planning. I am on the aspect of gift. So gift should be given. Stamp duty we have considered, and close relatives we have to consider. That why close relatives? Because love and affection needs to be demonstrated. What happens when the gift tax was not there, or gift tax was there if the gift is received in a country abroad? Then there was no gift tax. In between, it was neither income nor gift tax was there. So people used to do very smart tax planning. Say John from Pune, he is a wealthy person. So he will say that, okay, some Abdul Latif from Dubai should give gift to me, 1 crore rupees. You know, gifts are not given, they are generally purchased or they are accepted. So you know what is meaning at Abdul Latif giving gift to John, 1 crore rupees. But John is more smart. So he says that, okay, why he should give gift to me? I am already wealthy. So let him give gift to my wife. So her capital will get generated and we can generate income out of it. So Abdul Latif gives this to John's wife. And when a case is to be represented before the assessing authority, they ask, please demonstrate what love and affection that Abdul Latif has got for John's wife. And that was very tricky question, and those gifts failed. And when the gift fails, it is considered as a bogus gift. Please try to understand that that will come as a unexplained cash credit, and maybe under that 115 BB, some 60% tax, surcharge, etc. will attract. So care has to be taken that whenever you receive a gift, you are also able to demonstrate that the person giving gift and the person receiving gift, there is a bondage of love and affection. So two types of capital building exercises we have seen: intestate succession, no capital for HUF; succession through will, if properly drafted, there will be capital for the purpose of HUF, and gift also will generate into some capital. But whenever any succession is there, intestate succession or through will, no income tax attracts, because on succession whatever you receive is not considered as income, and therefore no income tax. But when you receive a gift, then in that case, there is certainly a tax implication, because under section 5610, if you receive any amount exceeding 50,000 rupees, then that is the income. So maybe even if stranger gives you 2,50,000 gift in a year, that will be income. But since threshold limit itself is 2,50,000, you will not be required to pay any tax. If he gives gift of say 5 lakh rupees, still you can invest 1,50,000 rupees and can pay tax only on 50,000 rupees. But sum and substance, one has to remember that if the gift is received by the HUF, then it attracts tax, because gift exceeding 50,000 is considered as income. There is one exception to this rule, that if gift is received from a relative, then in that case, there will be this provisions of section 5610 shall not apply. So who is relative to HUF? The definition says in case of Hindu undivided family, any member thereof is the relative. So in case of AHUF, A, Mrs. A, B, Mrs. B, C, Mrs. C, daughter, their sons, etc. They are all members. So any of these person gives gift, then that gift will not be attracting tax because section 56 clause 10, 56(1)(10) is not applicable. But then it is not recommended, as I said, because we are giving gift for the purpose of generating income to that family. If any family members gives gift to the HUF, then provisions of subsection 2 of section 64 attract, and then whatever income you earn from those gifts will be taxed in the hands of the donor. So Mr. A gives gift of 1 crore rupees to HUF, and HUF earns interest at 6%. Then 6 lakh rupee will be considered as income of Mr. A and not AHUF. If supposing out of that 1 crore rupees, business is started by HUF, then business income will be considered as of HUF. With 1 lakh rupees, he purchases shares. Those shares appreciate and they become 1 crore 60 lakh. And 60 lakh rupee is earned by the HUF. That also is income clubbed in the hands of A. Any dividend which is received, that is also clubbed in the hands of A. Post that, supposing on realizing shares, investment is made into say house property, fixed deposit. That income also keeps on clubbing with the donor. So it is not that only in one form it will club. That 1 crore rupee, whatever color they take, whatever income is received in that color, it will be included in the income of the donor. So this is one limitation, and therefore it is not recommended that members of the HUF give gift to the HUF. Even at the beginning, we have seen after the permanent account number, you have to open a bank account with payment of 10,000 rupees cash. There also it is recommended that this 10,000 rupees cash should also be by taking gift from someone, maybe from your sister, friend, etc. So clubbing will not attract. Of course, if the clubbing attracts, there is one alibi, and that is if you invest in some tax-free bonds. In that case, income earned will be tax-free. So even if it club, that taxation will not trigger. But mind well, as far as this clubbing is concerned, in case of clubbing, income is clubbed, income from income is not clubbed. So this is another phenomena of clubbing. So let us try to examine this phenomena. Say 1 crore rupee gift is given and that it is invested in bonds or fixed deposit. So year 1, 6 lakh rupee income is received, it will be clubbed because income from the gift of 1 crore rupees. In next year, on that 1 crore rupees, 6 lakh rupee will be the income, and on first year 6 lakh income will be 36,000. So this 36,000 is not income from the amount gifted, but it is income from amount gifted. So income from income is not clubbed, only income is clubbed. So this 36,000 rupees will not be clubbed. In next year, you will earn interest at 6% on 1 crore rupees, which is gift, 6 lakh rupees of first year, 6 lakh rupees of second year, and 36,000 interest on those 6 lakh rupees of first year. So interest will be 74,160 plus 6 lakh rupees, out of which again 6 lakh will be clubbed and 74,160 will not be clubbed. If supposing you start a business, you enter into partnership, and you in second year you give 6 lakh rupees as capital, which is the amount of interest. In that case also clubbing will not attract because what income is being earned from business is out of income out of gift. It is not from the amount gifted. So likewise, whatever income you earn out of income from the amount gifted, no clubbing. So this one principle, please bear in mind. Another way of supplying capital is by way of borrowing. So if any person borrows, then in that case, I'm sure that will be capital for the purpose of HUF. So if HUF wants to start a business, it wants to have capital of 50 lakh rupees, it is having only 10 lakh rupees, maybe 40 lakh rupees HUF can borrow, and with that HUF can start a business. One question is whether Karta, any member of HUF can give say loan to the HUF, deposit to the HUF. The answer is in affirmative. However, they should charge reasonable interest. So if they charge a reasonable interest, then that borrowing is also all right. With those borrowings, whatever income is earned will be income of the HUF. So these were important means of supplying capital to the HUF. Kavita, are there any questions up to now?
Yes, we have a few questions.
So that we will take up those questions and then move ahead.
Yeah. So our first question is, owning of ancestors' asset is necessary to form HUF?
Answer is no. HUF already exists. As I said, nobody forms HUF. The moment you take birth, you are a member of your father's HUF, grandfather's HUF. The moment you are married, your own HUF comes into being. So having of ancestral property or asset is not required. For the purpose of creating tax file for HUF, some capital is required. So getting property from ancestors by way of will is one of the mechanism of providing capital to earn income.
Right. Our next question is, can HUF be formed with a widow and her son as the Karta?
You can be HUF of either your own, that is along with your 5 and the degree below. Nobody degree above can be member of your HUF. So in son's HUF, mother cannot be member. But if HUF already existed, where say son's father A was alive, so A HUF was there. So A HUF comprised of Mr. A, Mrs. A and their son. And for some reason A expires, then that HUF will be reduced to 2% HUF, his mother, that is widow, and himself, the son. So that will continue to be HUF. So it is not a question of forming. But whatever his son's HUF is there, mother will not be member of his son, her son's HUF.
Right. Okay. And next question is, can HUF enter in a service business? Example, can HUF hire?
We will discuss it. We will discuss that. I have covered it.
Okay. Okay. Fine.
Yeah.
Does the new HSA given women right to claim share from her father's side of HUF as well as husband's side of HUF also?
See, as far as daughter's rights are concerned or female members' rights are concerned, they are co-partners in father's HUF.
Right.
Right to claim partition is available with a co-partner. So in her father's HUF, daughter can claim partition validly. As far as her husband's HUF is concerned, she is a member, she is not a co-partner. So there she cannot claim partition, but whenever partition takes place of her husband's HUF or her husband's father's HUF, then in that case, because the women are entitled to maintenance by the HUF, whatever money she receives against maintenance, that she will get, not otherwise. And she certainly cannot claim partition of any HUF from her husband's side.
Okay. Our next question is, can a HUF earn rental income if the property is in the name of the Karta, or does it need to be in the name of HUF only? Also, what if in case of an ancestral property?
Howsoever property might have come, it is ancestral, purchase by way of gift. Where the property belongs to the HUF, the income will belong to the HUF. Where the property does not belong to the HUF, it will not be income of the HUF. So assuming that father had purchased a say shop and it was given on a rent, and at the time of death, father makes a will and says that this shop will go to my son's HUF. Then that property becomes ancestral property of the son's HUF, and rent will be the income of HUF and not individual. Okay. But and how it is to be held, etc. will see, because the HUF is not a legal entity or under general law. Therefore, even if we say it belongs to the HUF, it will never be in the name of HUF. It will be in the name of some person, and that person will generally be a Karta. So it may be in the name of Karta, but we have to see with whom the beneficial ownership vests. If it vests with HUF, then income of HUF.
Right. Can an HUF earn income as a commission agent?
Covered. I have covered subsequently.
Okay. Can you please clarify when the amount received by B will be considered as an individual capacity, and when it will be considered under HUF capacity?
which amount, see, it depends upon how he has received the amount. He may receive amount by way of gift, he may receive by way of succession, he may receive by way of intestate succession. If it is intestate succession, Supreme Court says that it is his individual property. By way of will, if will says that it is to Mr. B, it will be his individual. If will says BHF, then it will be BHF. In case of gift, it says gift to B, it will be B's property. If it says BHF, then HF property. So recital is important.
So it will be as per the specification.
As per specification or recital in the document giving that money. And once the money is received, whatever income is earned out of that capital will be of HF, subject to the provisions of clubbing.
Right. Whether a gift can be given by a mother or father to her son's HF.
Yes.
Okay. Can a Karta to HF transfer his own cash funds to HF without attaching clubbing provisions?
Then that donor has to be finance minister, change the law. Then only it will not attract. Otherwise, presently law will attract. Only thing is that if they invest in tax-free bonds, then because in any case it is tax-free, even if clubbing is there, tax will not attract.
Okay. Can HF earn commission income through its Karta?
Covered. It is covered. I have said.
Okay.
I will say. Discuss.
Okay. Mr. A is having agricultural land and he gives this land to Mr. A HF as a gift. Is that allowed? Can the Karta give the gift to his own HF? Basically?
Yes. Yes, he can give gift.
Okay.
Again, here agricultural income will be clubbed, but again it is tax free.
Right. Again, we have one commission question which will be covered.
Yeah.
Can HF earn rent income from the property of municipal corporation which runs on pagdi mechanism received as inheritance from father after his demise?
See, in sum and substance, if the HF is having control, ownership over that particular right, whatever, then it will be HF income. But generally, whether those right to occupy property, rent, etc., is inheritable, in what way it is inheritable, those are different questions. We are not considering them at the moment. If we consider legally, yes, the father can make a will. Through will, he gives it to HF, and that is accepted under general law. Then whatever income he earns would be his HF's income. But generally, as I understand that whenever government agencies or such semi-government give property on pagri, etc., there is a clause of no further subletting. So that also should be taken. If that clause is not there, you are given fine.
Okay. Also, we have received one question in the chat box. I would request all attendees to please raise the question in the question and answer tab specifically. I'll just read out that one question. When does a father's HF ceases to exist except in case of partition of father's HF?
After 4 generations. See, in case of A's son, his son, that is A's grandson and his great-grandson. So these are 4 generations. So if supposing we consider he has only one son, so if he dies, his son will be alive, his wife would be alive, and all others would be alive. So if they live together, his HF will continue. Subsequently, his son dies, maybe his grandson will become Karta. If his grandson dies, his great-grandson will be Karta, and thereafter it will cease to exist. So 4 generations.
Okay. Yeah, that were the questions as of now.
Okay, so those commission and other questions I will cover in my subsequent topics itself. So there are some case laws where HF can accept gifts, and also they can give gifts. Now, business income of HF. So HF can run a proprietary business, and after running a proprietary business, HF can earn income. Now the issue is businesses like, let us assume that businesses of broker, businesses of grocery dealer, or any other business. Now for running business, what do you require? You require a capital. So we assume that HF had a capital of 1 crore rupees and they wanted to do brokerage business. Brokerage is a personal service. So a person is required to render that service. So if supposing Karta starts doing this broking activity, then in that case, there would be a question whether it is his personal exertion income or income flowing from his personal exemption or from capital of the HF. So it is better that HF employs some other persons who are say maybe 3 brokers, 2 admin staff, etc. They take on rent or purchase property of 30 lakh rupees, start a shop in market, and there they set up their purchase furniture and set up the broking business, and they start broking, maybe property broking, share broking, whatever. In this case, because the business is set up by the HUF with its own funds, it is employing various staff members to render those personal services. Income will be considered to be belonging to the HUF, because mainly capital or the risk is the driver for that income. Whatever human labor is there, that is compensated. Now, in this case, whatever 2-3 persons or 5-6 persons the HUF has employed, can it be possible that the Karta himself works and earns the income? The answer is yes. I am not saying it is no. But if he is not working at all, it would be better. So that clear cut one can demonstrate all remunerations paid. So salary paid is say 5 lakh rupees. We have earned brokerage of say 10 lakh rupees. Admin expenses 2 lakh rupees. So 3 lakh rupees HUF income. When Karta is working, so whatever net profit is remaining, that will have 2 components. One is the labor rendered by Karta, or the personal exertion by Karta, and capital and risk by HUF. So if whenever any family member is working, the HUF also gives some remuneration to him. Say they pay salary to the Karta 1,20,000. In that case, the HUF can say whatever remaining net profit is there clearly belongs to us, because even if Karta or any family member worked for the HUF, his labor was compensated by payment of remuneration or professional fees. So in that case, even such personal services like broking, etc. can be given. If you are doing trading business, that is possible. If you are doing manufacturing business, that is possible. If you are in some housekeeping business, some service activity, that is possible. But care has to be taken that the business has to be set up with the capital belonging to the HUF. Now, how that capital should come to the HUF? We have considered 4 means earlier. So that way, a business income can be begotten by the HUF, and it will be clearly HUF income. Once HUF earn income, all other provisions like tax audit, etc., or estimated income scheme, which is otherwise applicable, are applicable to every HUF. Second question is whether HUF can be partner in a partnership form. Now, Section 4 of Indian Partnership Act defines what partnership means. It says partnership is a relationship between the persons who have agreed to carry on business by all or any of them working for all, and to share the profits. So the catchword is person. Now, under general law, HUF is not a person. So if HUF is not a person, HUF cannot enter into partnership. That is the clear law. But then this case was, if you refer Rasik Lal and Company's case, there the Supreme Court has given answer also to this situation. And the Supreme Court has stated that wherever any HUF is entering into partnership, HUF per se, not being a person, cannot enter into a partnership, but HUF can request its Karta or any other person to represent the HUF in partnership. So in case of say Mr. A HUF, and they have capital, and they enter into ABC and Co partnership. So there A HUF can request Mr. A that please join as a partner on our behalf. We are required to supply capital of 10 lakh rupees. So we give you 10 lakh rupees and invest those 10 lakh rupees in partnership and become partner, and maybe the ratio is 30%. In this case, whatever income is earned from the partnership will be beneficially owned by HUF. Supreme Court has explained that because partnership is relationship between the person, for general law, Mr. A individual will be considered as a partner. But because Mr. A is representing HUF, he is in a representative capacity. So whatever income is earned, that income will belong to HUF. So from partnership, there would be 3 types of income. One is share of profit. Share of profit will obviously belong to HUF. Interest on capital which is supplied by the HUF will certainly belong to the HUF, but working partner remuneration, that we will discuss separately. Similarly, in case of LLP, there is an express provision that LLP cannot become partner, and a question was asked by ICA to MCA, whether HUF can be member of or partner of LLP. The answer was in negative. However, they also refer to this Rasiklal and Company, and they said that if HUF cannot become partner directly, maybe Karta can be nominated and Karta can become a partner. When Karta becomes partner, he will be in his individual capacity as a partner, but maybe income will belong to HUF. Coming to remuneration. Now, if the remuneration is paid to a partner by the partnership, it is governed by Section 40B, and Section 40B envisages the concept of working capital, and it says that a partner who has agreed to devote substantial time and efforts for the purpose of managing affairs, he will be working partner. HUF, not being a person, cannot devote time and attention, so HUF cannot earn that remuneration. So whenever any remuneration is paid to the Karta, who is representing his HUF in the partnership, that income from remuneration will belong to the Karta individually and not to the HUF, who is a beneficial partner. And our Pune Tribunal judgment in case of Bharat Enterprises has beautifully described this phenomena. So I would recommend, if you read that judgment, the matter would be apparent. This is yet another case where it is said that, okay, salary income would be of individual, not of a partnership. In case of interest, 40B4 also makes the provision, and in sum and substance, the provision is when any person is partner in a representative capacity, provisions of Section 40B will apply only for the purpose of capital supplied by the person represented and not by the person who is representing the person represented or in any other capacity. And let us see this with the help of example, that Mr. A is representing HUF. He had 10 lakh rupees of his own. He had 8 lakh rupees in HUF kitty, and 20 lakh rupees his daughter gave him and told that you invest in your partnership as a loan or a deposit. So 10 lakh rupees given by A from his own funds. So these 10 lakh rupees are given by the person who is partner, but not from the kitty of person represented. So these 10 lakh rupees will not be subjected to Section 40B. 8 lakh rupees are given by person represented. So this 8 lakh rupees will be subject to 40B. And again, 12 lakh rupees from daughter not subject to 40B. So all this interest will be tax deductible if used for business. But if we are taking second example of 15%, 1,50,000 and daughters 3 lakh, they are more than 12%. But that embargo of 12% is not applicable because individually he is not a partner or daughter is not a partner. But as far as this 1,20,000 of HUF is concerned, that will be subjected to provisions of Section 40B. And there is upper cap of 12% interest for deduction. So 96,000 deduction will be allowed. And over and above that, 24,000 will not be deductible. But then this 24,000 also will not be income of the HUF. So in first case at 10%, 80,000 will be income of HUF. In second case, 96,000 will be income of HUF. And in all other cases, 1 lakh, 1,50,000, 2 lakh, 3 lakh will be income of A and his daughter, not otherwise. Even if interest is paid at 15%, it will be allowed, not under 40B, but only they have to prove reasonableness. If the 15% is a reasonable rate of interest, already they are borrowing from banks, say 14%, 14.5%, and that is a secured borrowing. This is unsecured borrowing, so maybe 0.5%, 1% more can be justified. But in sum and substance, these funds are not subject to 40B. Can HUF invest in shares? Can they have demat account? The answer is no and yes. HUF, not being a person, cannot enter into contract of acquiring share, holding units, having demat account. But again, as the alibi has been given and has been upheld by this company cases in Vickers system, HUF can nominate its Karta or any other member or any person to represent HUF, and that representative will hold shares, and accordingly the income will belong to HUF. So before going to partition, any further queries?
Yes, we have again received some questions.
Yeah, and whatever earlier questions, I think we said we will answer subsequently. I think all of them are covered. If
Yes,
still
yes.
anything is not covered, we can take up.
Yeah. One question is, can one be a Karta of self and father's HUF at the same time?
Yeah, it is possible in that given chart. If supposing B is member of AHF and he is the eldest son. So when A expires, B will be cut off AHF as well as B will be cut off BHF.
Right. Next question is, Mr. A, along with his wife and daughter, forms an HF. After the death of Mr. A, whether the HF can continue or not?
Answer is in affirmative. If they continue to remain together, it will continue.
Okay.
And we have also a decision of Supreme Court which says that is the case of Budappa, that two brothers were there, they had wife and everybody has daughter. So one brother died, then second brother also died, but they continued to live together. So that was considered as HF, with widow of one brother becoming Karta. Because the Supreme Court said that it is also possible that they can adopt a son, the widow can get married. So there is again possibility of having HF. So immediately on demise of last male member from the HF, it will not disrupt.
Okay. Can the Karta of HF deal in securities in the name of HF?
The answer is yes. Again, as I said, that for dealing in securities, you need to be a person, because that is also contract of securities. So it will be the contracts, etc., will be in the name of Karta. So when he pays all this money from bank account of HF, I think the income will belong to HF, and somewhere he should also indicate, like in case of a partnership deed, it should be indicated that Mr. A, in his capacity as Karta of HF, is joining as a partner. In preamble, they should write that actually HF had funds, they wanted to enter into partnership. So they requested A to join as a partner. So he has joined as a partner. So likewise, some indication should be made, and particularly money should be used from HF's account.
Right. Can HF earn interest income from loans given to individuals or company out of amounts borrowed from outside?
Yes, that is possible. That is possible. Only we are not dealing with at the moment Banking Regulation Act, etc., etc. We are only on tax aspect.
Yeah. If the Karta is an NRI residing in US, does he have to declare his Indian status in the US?
I think yes, because in USA they really don't distinguish between this HF and all those things.
Yeah.
So I think they are required to here, but I'm not sure.
Okay. That's it for now.
Okay. Now going to partition. You know, maybe for some reason or the other, not necessarily only because of quarrel, but because of convenience of family also, ultimately partition can happen of HF. Whenever HF is to be partitioned, there are two types of those HF. One is HF, those are either to assessed, and HF are not assessed. If the HF is either to assessed, then provisions of section 171 are applicable. And under section 171, a partial partition is not recognized, only total partition is recognized, and that there should be total partition qua persons and qua property. When such total partition takes place, you can apply to the assessing officer under section 171, and then in due course of time, he shall issue the order recognizing this partition, and thereafter income will be earned, assessed in severalty. But if there is a partial partition, then in case of a partial partition, the income will still continue to be assessed with the HF. And just to give an example, supposing AHF had 4 crore rupees. Now, younger son B wants to separate out. He said that, no, I don't want to be in AHF. So his 1 crore rupees are given and he separates from the HF. So under Hindu law, this partial partition is recognized. So there will be separate income out of those 1 crore rupees to BHF. But as we have seen, the entire property is not partitioned. Some of the members are continuing together. So this is a partial partition. So partial partition is not recognized in income tax law. So for the purpose of Income Tax Act, AHF will have to ascertain its own income, which will be out of those 3 crore rupees remaining with AHF. And whatever earnings are made by BHF out of that 1 crore rupees, they will be clubbed with AHF's income, and accordingly they will have to pay tax. And that will continue till that partial partition continues. So partial partition is not recognized in income tax law. Whosoever gets assets on those partial partition, he will that HUF will continue to pay tax on it. Only on total partition, that every individual or every person getting that property will be identifiable. So this is as far as section 171 is concerned. Partition need not be with meets and bounds. And again, even before partition to constitute an HUF, it is not necessary that you should stay in only one house. Maybe it is possible that there are 3 sons, one is staying in Mumbai because he's employed there, another is staying in USA, and one is only staying along with father. So still they will be HUF if they continue to live together, worship together. So physical living together is not necessary. By not breaking out from the family is sufficient. Then again, unequal partition does not amount to gift. The Supreme Court says that on the date of partition, for the first time, shares of the members are identified. Therefore, unequal partition does not amount to gift. So here, can daughters have HUF? So female members cannot have HUF. A single person, male or female, cannot have an HUF. However, as I stated earlier, the property, when received by a co-person, he was single. Subsequently, he gets married. The moment he gets married, he becomes, that property goes to HUF, and income also goes to HUF. Then this is Virappan Chettiar is the case which one question was there. A joint family continues even in the hands of females after death of sole surviving male member. So in that case, widow of members of HUF can perform as a karta, and still the HUF will continue. That is CIT versus Virappan Chettiar. So these were some of the important points which I thought worthy of discussion. So if there are any queries, we will take them up.
No, we have no questions received.
Okay. So if anybody wants to ask, fine. Otherwise, we'll call it a day.
No, I guess we don't have any further questions. So thank you, sir. That was a wonderful seminar. We got to know quite many things about HUF that many of us were not aware about. So really awesome one. I would now request CA Kashinath Pathare sir. Sir, do we have you? Kashinath sir? Okay, I guess he's not available. So he was to give the vote of thanks. So now I'll do that.
We know living fiction, so we can deem that vote of thanks are given.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Yes, so very informative and good session that was. And also we have covered all the questions, all the queries. I hope all the queries were answered. All the doubts were cleared. Now we will be meeting tomorrow on the last day of this direct tax refreshers post 2021 for a panel discussion on the recent judgments of ITAT, and we will conclude for the day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ankita. And thank you, everybody.